Hello and welcome to Breaking the Guard. This is the last episode of the year as the new year approaches. I hope everyone has had a great year. I know I have had a great year and it's only going to be getting better, I think, into 2025. A few things have come up that I wanted to talk about. First, I've been seeing quite a few people talking about weight cuts, and I think and these are supposedly MMA journalists, and they were talking about Sean Strickland being 223 pounds out of in his training camp, saying that that shows he's not prepared, that he's not taking training seriously. And I'm scratching my head because I'm like, how are you saying that in this day and age, right? Like, it's normal now for pro fighters to cut 30, 40 pounds, especially at the higher weight classes. Khabib was cutting 35, 40 pounds, reportedly. I didn't witness it myself, but this is what's always been reported that he would come in and fight day between 180 and 190, and he was fighting at 155, right? So that's a much bigger cut considering he's starting at a lower weight class, right? Strickland's fighting 185, so at 223, he's what, like 40, 38 pounds? Again, it's a big cut, but that's what they do these days, right? I know people 195 that fight at 155. So that's and out of all the people that accuse him not taking training seriously, Sean is not the guy. Like I just trained with him the other day. I see him every time I go to the gym. He's there, right? The guy is training every day, multiple times a day. He's in great shape, and it's weird the pictures they put to try to like fat shame a fighter, and like he's shredded in both pictures. It's just one of them. He's in the weight cut, so obviously without all the water weight, all your skin gets really tight, so your muscles are gonna pop. On the other one, he's got water weight on him, so he looks like a normal guy, uh, who's very good shape. You can see his abs and everything, but they're not popping out because he's still got water in him. I think, and it's funny because one of these MMA journalists trying to defend themselves, like, oh yeah, you don't think I'm not an expert because I've been studying this sport for 9 years? It's like, buddy, like I've been in this for 30. Right? I know kids that have watched this sport as long as you have, so that's not really a credential. You know, it's especially nowadays where journalists are basically just people on Twitter watching other people and reporting on what other people have reported on. Right? I think it's pretty pathetic in what's coming across as journalism. Right? To me, growing up again in the 80s and 90s, a journalist is somebody that actually went out in the field, saw things firsthand, interviewed the people he was talking about, and did research on that topic, and then was able to give an informed opinion. Whereas now it's like you surf the internet, you don't vet your sources, you make an uninformed opinion on something you have no idea what you're a fan of it, but you're not really an expert in it, right? So, of course, that's not everybody. That's a that's just the negative view, or at least the negative perception that I have of some of the people who are claiming to be journalists, right? So just a PSA, lots of fighters are cutting 30, 40 pounds, right? And all because like they were giving Jamal Hill a lot of crap also because he's 243 and like, oh, he's at the fight 205. It's like, yeah, he's going to make that really easy, right? At 243, that 40, and not even 40, he's another 38-pound cut. That's a easy cut, right? Because again, the bigger you are, the easier it is to cut weight. Uh, the smaller you are, obviously, the smaller. The key factor of losing weight for fighters in a cut is water weight. Now, the more muscle mass that you have, the easier it is to shed water weight because the muscles store a lot of water. And that's where most of that water cut is going to be coming from. Not all of it, but a good amount of it. So the ideal body type would be somebody who's very shredded, very low body fat, good amount of muscle mass on them. So he doesn't have to diet, which is what a lot of people think has to happen. Like, oh, he's got to lose like 7 pounds of fat in like 3 weeks. It's really hard because you can only lose this amount you have to be in a massive caloric deficit. That's old school, right? That's what people on my day were doing. Like they were fat off camp and then they were trying to get back in shape during the training camp and then they were doing the water cut afterwards. Like the fighters nowadays are in shape year round. Now, maybe they'll lose a pound or two of fat, but it's not like they have to lose 10 pounds of fat, right? Like if they did, they're sloppy, right? Now, I think some people are saying Jamal Hill is in that case, which maybe he looks a little loose compared to like Strickland or someone else who was cutting like strictly water. And in that case, it could be even easier. However, the problem with doing the diet cuts, I would say, is that your training is going to be suboptimal because you are going to have to be at a caloric deficit, which means now you're not getting enough energy. Your body's going to suffer in training. So you can do it. It's not smart though because you're going to be more likely to get injured. You're going to have bad training sessions because you're not going to be, performing at the top level. And that means that your technique, your execution, your timing are all going to be off. So that's not an ideal scenario. You should be in shape and be pretty much within a couple pounds of the weight that you intend to cut on when you start your camp. That way you are in prime position and that you don't have to worry about, starving yourself 8 weeks out, from a fight. That you should be able to eat fully. So there's that. But again, like I was talking about, water cut, mostly water. The top fighters now have access to a lot of dietitians, fitness experts, and whatnot. So they're really able to dial in, and that's how they're getting much more out of their water cut. It's beyond my pay grade, being honest here. Like I said, for me, 10 to 20 pound weight cuts were a standard, 20 years ago, and those were pretty straightforward. You didn't really need uh, too much background in doing it. You water loaded, you control your sodium levels, you lowered your food intake in the last week, and you just cut out the day before, all water, most of your food, and just really dialed in on sweating it out. Whether you did it in the sauna, in a hot tub, right? Those were the two preferable methods because ideally you're not trying to run it out because you're just exhausting those muscles. If we're able to get the body to push it out through heat, it's going to be a bit more efficient. But there is a danger you have to watch out with. You're doing heat, that you don't overheat yourself and potentially cook yourself alive. Right? There's people that do pass out, and that's why when you're doing these type of cuts, you should always have somebody watching over you, making sure, because we've had people pass out in a tub and had to yank them out, drop ice on them. Right? Um, I think on one occasion we had to do that, and again, somebody who didn't prepare well. So um, these are things that you have to be ready for. This is not safe. I don't like it. I think it's dangerous. I not only is it bad for your kidneys and whatnot because you're just really stressing them out uh, by squeezing all the water out of your body. You're also putting yourself at a higher risk of concussion because apparently, if I understood the science correctly, you're not just taking out water out of your muscles, which is the greatest volume of it from my understanding, but you're also taking it from all your different organs. And one of the key ones that we're worried about is our brain. And again, I could be wrong about this, but my understanding of this is that the water from your brain is the first to come out and the last to get in. Now, why is that important? Your brain is protected by essentially a fluid barrier around it, and it creates like a water bed, right? So there's just water all around the brain encasing it, and it's kind of to keep the brain in place from not touching the sides of your skull. When you get hit, that water acts as a cushion so that it doesn't touch the skull. The brain has to move, from the shock wave, but ideally it's not going to move enough to make impact. When there's less water in there, guess what happens? There's less cushion. Now the brain is moving more freely, which is not a good thing because now it can slam into the side of the head, and the moment it does, that's a concussion, right? Not good. So there is an increased risk of a concussion and consequently TBI when you're cutting weight. And now that fighters are cutting even more weight than they ever did before, we're just creating bigger risk factors. So, not a fan of weight cutting. I wish there was a better system to handle it. I think personally, if you're a fighter, with all the stuff they have online, it seems like you could just make a system where you weigh the fighter every day. Every morning they get up, or you just put a set time, they have to weigh in every day until their fight starts. That's going to give you a really good idea of where your true weight is, right? A guy, if I said, oh, we're going to do a weight check, 2 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 6 weeks out, I could cut the day before that weight check and then make it and then, get back to my normal weight. It's not, I don't think it's great, but you can do that. People are going to try to gain whatever rule set you have as much as possible. If I have a fight that's 8 weeks away and I weigh in every single day, you're not going to be able to cheat that in the sense, or if you are, you're going to probably lose. If you had to cut weight every single day for 6 to 8 weeks, it's just not optimal. At that point, you're just going to fight at what your weight is, right? And I feel like if we had two fighters that say, hey, okay, we'll abide by this. I weigh myself every day. It's very easy. You just wake up and you walk into your scale, get your weight, that's it. It's not a big ask, right? If you gave me the choice, cut 40 pounds or weigh yourself every day, I'm gonna raise my hand. I'll weigh myself every day. That's a lot easier, right? And I think any fighter in the world would agree with me on that, right? It's a lot easier to weigh yourself every day than to try to cut 40 pounds. All right. So if you made that agreement and you did some type of verification where maybe you have a special scale or like a webcam or something to that effect, um, where the fighters would submit their weights, and then both fighters would know, oh, okay, my opponent's here, I'm here, right? And give some type of leeway as far as like you have to be within 5 pounds of the weight division or whatnot. Something small, but not enough where it's like, okay, now I have to cut weight for this thing, right? Like I feel it's more about like a gentleman's agreement, like where if I know my opponent has weighed in between 190 and 195 for 8 weeks straight, and on fight day he's 195 and then I'm 190, I'm not gonna flip out and go, oh, I got freaking cheated. He's 5 pounds heavier than me. I'm like, okay, like I could have been at the higher end of the weight spectrum if I really wanted to, and it's not like I got hoodwinked, right? Like it's in the range. So I feel as long as you make an acceptable range by both fighters, whatever that is, that's fine. Normally, like when we're weight cutting, we are concerned about even a pound because we know that if he had to cut and still was a pound over, that means he was cutting from much higher, right? Like generally. So he might have been cutting 35 pounds, 40 pounds, and maybe my guy wasn't cutting that much. So like I know he's still got a huge advantage, and he didn't complete it. But if we weren't never cutting to begin with, and I know my opponent's weight the entire time, it's very easy to make adjustments. And even if he was 190 the whole time on fight day, he was like, or on the weigh-in day, he was 195 or whatever. It's like, okay, whatever. Like I knew that was the range. And I should have been fine with that from the beginning. Like I might be on the low end, he's going to be in the high end. And I should be fine with that arrangement. And I feel like if we did that, that would solve the cut problem, in my opinion. Because now it's just about optimizing your body mass, right? If I know my opponent has to be in this weight range, which is very limited, like I said, like a 5 pound range, and that I'm going to be in that range as well, then I just got to make sure that I am as strong, fit, and muscular as possible, which doesn't mean I am, cutting water out and, doing water loading. And like, no, I'm going to be eating very clean. I'm going to be, very well hydrated. That means I'm getting better quality practices. I'm not having any ill health effects. And in fact, I'm going to be doing the opposite. I'm going to be making myself as healthy as possible, right? Because I want to be as fit as I possibly can be. So lower my body fat percentage as much as I can so that I can be as strong, but not too low where, you start losing some cushioning in your joints and lubrication when your fat levels drop too much. So like, I think most guys are probably somewhere 8% to 12%. Uh, that's usually optimal for most people. Now, some people can do lower, but I think in that range, you're probably doing pretty good, right? And not by skin caliper test, but I mean doing like a DEXA scan, which is the most accurate method of testing your body fat. That's gonna really let you know. This calipers are wildly variable. They're only accurate to measuring change of body fat, not so much where your actual body fat is. Um, a DEXA scan is a dual X-ray technology. It's going to see everything inside of you. It knows your fat distribution across your body. Uh, it's the most accurate thing that we have at the moment. So if I was a fighter, that's what I would be doing. So I know where I can optimize, be as fit as possible. And to me, that's what makes the most sense, right? Like I tell people all the time, like if I was going to fight somebody, right, I wouldn't say, hey, like on a street fight, I'm not going to say, hey, you know what, before we have our street fight, why don't we wait a week so that we can cut weight and cut like 30 pounds the day before the fight, and then we'll fight the day after that. Who the hell would agree to that? Right? That's stupid. No, I'm going to fight you as you are right now. So like, it's silly to add this extra hurdle because it's a huge distraction, right? The weight cut in itself is a big part of the camp as far as strategizing on how to make the weight and getting everything dialed in just right. And you have to bring in extra people to help you manage the weight cut. It's just a lot of nonsense, in my opinion, that we really shouldn't have to put up with. It's just that people are petty and they're gonna try to cheat wherever they can, or maybe cheat's not the right word, but they're gonna try to game the system wherever they can, right? So there's no honor among thieves here. That's why I feel like my little system here, just weigh yourself in every day and have it submitted every day once you sign the fight contract. That's going to put a lot of people at ease. Personally, when I was fighting, weight cutting was obviously not a part that was enjoyable. So I would love to have been spared that and just said, okay, this is the range that you're going to fight at. Also, knowing where my opponent is at would also be a big relief because then I would know, like, okay, he's either very off of weight, so I know right now this fight's in jeopardy, and maybe there could be a clause like if the fighter is out of the weight range for X days in a row or something like that, there's a penalty, or the fight's going to be canceled, something to that effect. Basically, a breach of contract, right? So we can have protections put in there as well. And again, I'm not going to, this is obviously very speculative. I'm sure nobody's going to actually implement this. But you could put some more thought into like how to safeguard this to make sure that the fighters are within the weight range the entire time, right? Maybe it's not 8 weeks out, but it's going to be like 4 weeks out. They have to be on weight for the next week. That way, if it's a 6 or 8 fight, 8 weeks out, the fighter might have been off camp. So, okay, in those first couple of weeks, they're going to have to diet down and get themselves down into the right weight range. So that the last 4 weeks, they're now dialed in, right? And they're just basically optimizing and staying in that range, which is what normally, I mean, like I've been pretty much the same weight range for 10 months now, right? Once you're at your ideal weight range, it's easy to maintain. So, anyhow, that was supposed to be a little small story, but then, and it'd take a lot more time. That's my opinion. So, long story short, weight cuts nowadays are typically somewhere in the 20 to 40 pound range territory from many other weight classes, not just heavyweight, from cruiserweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, lightweight. So please, if you're a journalist or whatnot, wise up a little bit, right? Like, all because somebody is 40 pounds over does not mean they're not in shape. It might just mean they're exactly where they wanted to be. Anyhow, hopefully, some of you guys agree with my assessment of the weight cutting situation currently. I think this could be applicable in a lot of areas. at least in the professional realm, because I always hate seeing weight cutting. I just don't like it. And I think if we had a better system in place, it would work. I know some people always like to mention 1FC because they do hydration checks, but my understanding is that system is very gameable as well. Lots of fighters have cracked that code, so they're able to, cheat that system also. So that doesn't really work. I think the easiest way, like I said, is just weigh them every day, right? Have some type of camera setup system at the fighter's house so you can see they're not like touching the wall to get their weight off or whatnot. Scale has been verified, or, you know, there's going to be some technological uh, assessment that has to be done, right? Whether they need to make a scale that can be verified, that is accurate, so that whenever they're stepping the scale, uh, everyone knows, okay, the scale is validated, right? It's not just like I bought a Walmart scale and I tampered it so I could step on it. But there's going to be a technology issue involved there. But assuming you overcome that hurdle, which I think you definitely could, then it's just a matter of having people weigh in every day. And I think that would solve a lot more problems. I think it would make better fights, it would make healthier fighters. Uh, and it'll take away one thing out of the game that I think shouldn't be in there, right? So you guys can let me know what you think. If it's realistic, unrealistic, stupid, smart, uh, and that's all I have for you. Wish you guys a happy New Year, and I'll see you next week.